Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. F. Scott Field, and I've got with me today a very special guest I've been looking forward to connecting with for a very long time, Dr. Heidi Heron. And actually, we're going to dive into a little bit of a topic that we've been talking about for probably a couple months now. We've been kind of grazing the surface, but today we actually get to do a deep dive. So, Dr. Heron, tell us a little bit about your academic journey and how it's led you to where you're at today.
Wonderful. Thank you and welcome. And thank you very much for welcoming me on. My educational journey is a little bit duality. I did my undergrad degree in psychology and communications and ended up going into human resources for a number of years. And what I was really interested in that aspect were just how people work and the communication aspect. And I found that I didn't learn a whole lot of what I wanted to learn. And most of human resources had nothing to do with the humans and more to do with the resources and pushing of papers and getting things done. In and amongst that, I started taking a journey and taking some courses and classes in neurolinguistic programming. And we'll chat more about that in just a little while. But within that really intrigued me to learn more about the communication cycle of the unconscious mind, of human potential, of shifts and changes. And in my learning journey, I ended up learning more about myself in a master's degree in adult education. And a few years later, still on that realm of human development and what makes people tick, I completed my doctorate in clinical psychology. And then just a few years, actually about a year and a bit ago, I finished up a master's in consciousness, and which brings a whole nother dimension of interest and understanding to what I do. And along the way, I started working with the skills of NLP with clients. I started training NLP. I started writing about it, and my educational journey from the master's in education has played out well from the undergrad degrees to the master's degrees and doctorates. So that's how my educational journey has brought me to where I am, or maybe how I've brought my educational journey to where it is.
Yeah, I mean, that is like definition of lifelong learner right there, right? Like,
Right.
always craving and trying to learn more. And I love that because you've stacked some different skills along the way.
Yeah.
Uh, Very much, like I was an English major before I became a physical therapist, before I got my educational doctorate. So all of those things combined helped with communication and with the
Absolutely.
writing skills and the clinical skills and all of that. And, I'm thankful for it. It's been a very, convoluted journey. It wasn't a straight and narrow, just I'm going to be a physical therapist and this is the path. But
Yep.
I very much appreciate, my journey and where it's led me. So let's get into this. We've alluded to this a little bit. Like I said, a couple months ago, we did an episode on neurolinguistic programming. And NLP, I think, is, I don't want to say misunderstood. I feel like it's underutilized right now, if
Hmm.
anything, because I've taken so many skills from NLP and started kind of putting them into my regular practices because I think it's so great. But give our audience a little bit of context and just tell them, what is neurolinguistic programming?
Sure. So my definition and what I use with my clients, with my students is I think quite simple. Where we're looking at the neuro and the linguistic and the programming, for me, it's really about understanding how the language of the mind creates the patterns and programs that we run in life. We run programs that make us happy, or we get sad or frustrated or angry or hurt or tired or lonely. And there's something that creates that. And from a health perspective, I think most health aspects get tied into it, from chronic fatigue syndrome to anxiety, depression, the emotional aspects of things, plus just headaches and backaches and neck aches and this kind of stuff, technical term. There's something going on from the so how the language of the mind creates those programs. Now, once I know, or because I know I can figure out from my clients or from my students or my friends or myself what's going on. And because I understand part of how the language of the mind creates those programs, we can also use techniques and tools to unlearn, to change the unconscious programming. And I think that when you said before that NLP's misunderstood, I think there's a big aspect of that.
Yeah, I love NLP in that, obviously coming from an English background, I feel like the words we use are very important.
Yeah.
And as my years have gone on, especially in education, I've tried to be a lot more thoughtful of the words I use,
Hmm.
because they do carry meaning. And there's been a bunch of articles published under the same basic premise or title of words that harm, words that heal, in the
Yeah.
medical profession, right? And we hear this all the time of doctors telling patients, oh, your back is the worst I've ever seen, or you have the knees and joints of an 80-year-old, and they're only
Yeah.
30. And it's like, whether or not that's true, why are we even having that discussion?
Right.
Because now I have to go in and unteach them that, well, maybe, but maybe not. Like, let's take one step at a time. Things may be bad. We could maybe get them better. We don't know. Let's try some things and see, right? Like, but they come into me at such a high escalated, fear or, down mood. And it's like, well, if we set them up to succeed in the very beginning with the language that we use and the words that we use, I think they'd
Hmm.
have a lot better outcomes. And a lot of the articles kind of allude to that. So
You
uh,
bet.
the the thing that I think is amazing is, like, I remember very early on, my dad was an English teacher, a high school English teacher, and he also ran a landscaping business in the summers. So he had this entrepreneurial mind and spirit. And one of the things that he had taught me at a very early age was our thoughts become our beliefs, and our beliefs become our actions. And I've heard that
Yeah.
dozens of times now in some way, shape, or form throughout my life. And I've, found it to be true. You've got to be and believe, right, that you are the thing you want to do, to then get the outcomes and actions you want. So it a lot of times it's people think that it's do, then be, then have, when in
Right.
reality it's be, then do, then have, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
tell us a little bit about how NLP kind of fits into that, and how people use it.
Well, I think that that's part of the, I don't want to say misunderstanding because I think you've got a great understanding, but I think there's a lot more than just the language that we use. There's the language of what happens inside of our mind. And from that aspect of be, then do, then have, so many people are focused on the doing, doing, doing so that they have, so eventually they're going to be. But oftentimes there's this unconscious cycle that until we get to that root cause of that pattern in there, we can't ever get to that space of being because most people don't understand what that means. Most people think that being means that you need to be sitting like a Zen Buddha for hours and days on end. And then if I'm being, how do I actually pay my bills? Because that's doing. And that's a whole nother conversation. But I think that let me give you an example. I was working with a client she was so stuck. Her words were probably imposter syndrome. And she was so stuck in what she was doing. She was so fearful of stepping outside of the box because she was afraid of losing what she had. But she would put a brave face on and show up at work, show up with friends, show up with family, and she would be who she thought she should be. But inside, she was dead. And we used a process as an NLP process that there's lots and lots of them. But this one tracks back a pattern, a belief, and tracks it back on our timeline back to where a root cause is. Now, the majority from what a Dr. Morris Massey said during this developmental period, sorry, the imprint period, which is from birth to about 7, he said that's where the majority of our values and beliefs get created. And she went back to this little memory, and I don't know if it's a real memory or just a movie in the mind. But what was happening in her little movie in her mind was she was crossing the road and she dropped a teddy bear. A teddy bear. and she couldn't find her teddy bear. She lost her teddy bear. And then one of her family members found her teddy bear and it was, squished with tire tracks. And her little unconscious mind, probably 3 years old or something like that, said to her, "You can't let anything go. You're going to lose it. You can't let anything go. You're going to lose it." And so her whole entire life, she has not let things go. And she has tried to hold on so tightly to people and jobs and places and things that she lost herself in there. Now, that's the language of the mind. And it's not just the verbal language, it's the emotions, it's the thoughts, it's the behaviors, because, there's that other triangle aspect of what we think affects what we feel and what we do, and what we do affects what we think and what we feel and and so on and so on and so on. So we were able to go back and basically upskill, reevaluate that from a perspective as an adult. And what I've recognized is the majority of those patterns that we get created, that we create at some point in time, are generally created from a safety aspect, but they were also created for a moment. They weren't meant to be created for a lifetime.
Yeah.
But then we hold on and we go, "That's who I am. That's my label." And then she can't be herself and is afraid people are going to find out that she's not who they think she is, from a teddy bear.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time, it seems like, especially with the subconscious mind, there's blocks or barriers or things we're holding on to that we obviously don't even know are there.
You
So we've
bet.
got to try to go back and track it and find them to then
Yeah.
undo them or release them so that we can move forward and make progress. So talk
Yep.
a little bit about the power of the unconscious mind and
Oh
how
my
that
gosh.
plays a part in all of this.
Well, according to some studies, and I can't quote which studies they are specifically, they're saying that about 10% of our mind is that conscious thinking analytical mind. The rest of it is that unconscious mind that runs our body, that stores our memories, that creates our emotions, that moves our body, that we live and dream and play by. And we don't think about it. You don't think about eating and breathing and digesting your food unless something comes up and it's hard to swallow or it's hard to breathe. Then we bring conscious awareness into it. But the last time you tried to, balance a whole bunch of things in one hand, carry your cup of coffee in another hand, and walk slowly, then we were probably conscious of what we were doing and most likely tripped or dropped something. But everything else is very much in that unconscious realm. And our unconscious mind is the domain of our emotions, our memories, our beliefs, our values, who we are. And when we try and do too much of the conscious thinking and awareness around it, we get stuck. We what's it called? The paralysis, analysis by paralysis, paralysis of analysis, one of those two,
Yeah.
where everything is stored in our unconscious mind. And we're not privy to it. There's another, I do need to find who wrote this study. Uh, so I'm outside quoting. They said between 3 and 6% of our memories we have conscious access to. That's not much. But most people focus on what they know. And when they're trying to track back patterns and programs, they're going, "Okay, well, I think it was when I was 12 and my sister did this, or my teacher did this, or my dad did this." And that is might be one conscious memory in an entire bucket or a gestalt of an emotion or a pattern, but it might not be the first one. And I know with my clients that have seen therapists for years and years and years on the same issue, that usually they talk about what they know instead of investigate through the unconscious mind of what they don't know.
Yeah, I
That's where the
mean,
magic lies.
I was just going to say that really brings me to a lot of what we've been talking about in our metacognition of leadership group is biases and how we all have them, whether we think we do or we don't, they're
Yep.
there. And so again, a lot of people may not even know they have them. And then the answer to kind of not fixing it, but addressing it is just to be aware that, okay, there's probably biases involved, and then get curious about it and ask or think, why do I believe this? Is this a
Yeah,
truth, or was I told this, or did I experience something that then shaped the bias?
you bet.
And then if it's a truth, then I can move forward on it. If it's
Yeah.
not, I need to do more investigating and figure that
Well,
out.
let me introduce you to two questions. So, two questions that'll actually identify more of a full belief statement because we talk a lot in beliefs. But let's say somebody has a bias about themselves or someone else. And let's say they say, that person can't do this. First question, how do I know? What evidence do I have? How do I know? And then whatever the answer to that question is, the next question is, well, what causes that? So if it's, well, that person can't do that. Well, how do I know that? Well, because that person isn't educated in that. Well, what caused them to not be educated in that? They didn't have the information to be educated. So the full belief statement becomes they didn't have the knowledge to be educated in it, and they're not educated, therefore they can't do that. And that starts to figure out where do those unconscious biases come from. It finds either a complex equivalent statement or a cause and effect statement that leads to that belief or that understanding.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, something we talk about often is just curiosity. Being generally curious
Yeah,
is going to be a big help, especially with
huge,
NLP. So, um,
huge.
talk to us a little bit about, like, if you're, let's say, a student, or even if you're a professor and you're just learning about NLP, and you're wanting to get started in it, you're wanting to learn more about it or practice it, how would somebody go about even getting started with neurolinguistic programming?
The World Wide Web is full of great information, but also a little bit of weird information too.
Yeah.
Um, First, I would go to the Wikipedia page and then dismiss everything on the Wikipedia page.
Fair,
But I
fair.
think it's a good it's a good history, a little bit of NLP, but it's a really bad representation of NLP because the author of the Wikipedia page has some beef against one of the founders or elders of NLP and refuses to make any
Yeah.
changes to
You
it.
mean you mean a bias?
A bias. Exactly, exactly. But there are some absolutely wonderful videos and books and YouTubes about NLP. And, find out, I have a YouTube channel, Dr. Heidi NLP, um, and find out what do you want to know about? Do you want to know about the communication side of NLP? Do you want to know about the personal development side, the leadership side, the change side, the psychological side? Because there's so much to NLP. And just put your toe in. You don't have to dive in. Put your toe in and start learning a little bit. One of the books I wrote was You Must Learn NLP. And I wrote out, it started as a blog and I ended up with 156 ways that learning NLP will improve your life and threw all those blog posts into a book. I can tell you it's not the most glamorously written book, but it helps people to figure out what it is in the vast amounts. From a learner's perspective, I would highly recommend students to figure out from an NLP perspective what is not just their learning style, like that visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and internal dialogue or audio digital, depending on what book you read. But there's a bunch of, and I would say this for educators too. Um, there's a thing in NLP called meta programs, which are the programs, the filters beyond our programs. And there's about 60 different meta programs. And they tell us things like it's a lot of time context specific, but when you're learning, do you need the big picture, the detail first? Are you moving towards what you want or away from what you don't want? Are you figuring out how information fits into what you are looking for or how it mismatches? And there's about 60 of these. Are you risk positive or risk adverse? Are you an early adapter or a late changer? And those help with understanding how you learn. Because one thing that we all know listening to this, we never learned how to learn.
Yeah. I mean, I literally am guilty of that. I was a rote memorizer throughout all
Yeah.
of high school and most of college. Grad school, I started realizing this isn't working. I got to figure something out. And I didn't learn how to learn really until I went through an educational doctorate, which is nuts to me to get that far in
Right.
life and not know, oh,
Yeah.
I wasn't actually learning. I was just memorizing and knowledge dumping till the next test.
And then as soon as that test is done,
Oh man, it
all
was
that
gone.
information is gone.
Yeah. And so, that was really eye-opening to me. And I
Yeah.
never intended on teaching. My dad was an English teacher, like I said, sat in on his classes, was not interested. But once I went through the EDD, I kind of was going to do that as a backup plan or retirement plan.
Hmm.
Uh, that's when my mind was blown as like, oh my goodness, this is how the human brain works and different ways that we can learn and take in
Yeah.
information and process it. And
Yeah.
then here's how to teach to those ways that we learn. And that's when
You
my
bet.
journey really began. And it was, like I said, I think we all kind of sign up for lifelong learning, especially
We
when
do.
you're going through physical therapy or a graduate program, or, I mean, really, it should be life in general. But, that's not always the case. Some people just, don't want to learn more. I can't get enough, right?
Or
I can't
I can't get
stop.
enough either.
Yeah.
I probably don't need any more formal degrees, but I will always, always learn. And
Yeah,
if it
that's
ends
for
up
sure.
being even my master's degree, I didn't mean to get a master's degree. I just kept taking classes and I was like three away and a big paper.
Yeah.
Might as
Yeah.
well keep going.
Might as well, right? Yeah,
Might as well keep
absolutely.
going. But on that aspect, I think that there's, that element of learning and knowing. And some people learn because it's just the next thing. But I think that if educators from, elementary and primary school up university level, if they taught less of what they're teaching and more of why they're teaching it, then I think we would enthuse people, we would intrigue people. Because my guess is it wasn't until you were doing your educational doctorate that you actually realized why. Why do I want to learn this? Why? And I have a philosophy that kind of it's a little bit off topic, but similar. That a lot of people think that they need willpower to get things done. And I don't think we need willpower. I think we need why power. Because when we have a strong enough why, anything is possible.
Yeah, and that's a big takeaway because I deal with ADHD, right? And a lot of times it's not that I don't know what to do, it's that I can't put together the process to do it.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
if the why is big enough and the passion is there and I have to get this done because this is meaningful and impactful, I'm
You'll
laser
figure it out.
focused. I'm in.
You
Yeah.
bet.
And
You
so
bet.
a lot of what I talk to and teach, with regards to like business and starting a small business, and it's like, it can be as big or as small as you want, but it doesn't matter if you don't have the why behind it and the passion, because when it
Correct.
gets tough, and inevitably it will,
It's going
if
to get tough.
it's not there, if the passion's not there, you're just going to cut bait and leave. And that's fine. You tried
Yeah.
something, it didn't work out. But if you're really truly passionate about it and it centers around that thing that fires you up and lights you up, you're going to keep going. You're going to find a
Yeah.
way.
If
So
it's
that
more than just a paycheck, if it's more than
exactly.
just, oh, I'm going to start this business so that I can, have the flexibility and the freedom, because it's so much more than that, because it takes a lot to get to the flexibility and freedom and the ongoing pay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so many people get stuck at the how part. And that's again part of that unconscious programming. That there's that meta program aspect of I need to know how to do it. I need to know the first steps. And maybe there's some fear of failure. Maybe there's some perfectionism. Maybe there's some patterns of the need for certainty. But I think the how, the path that we take, is probably the last thing that we
Yeah.
need, because your path and my path are very, very different. I don't want to take, maybe I do, but I don't need to know the steps you took. I need to find my own. And I want to learn from other people because maybe they've got some shortcuts for me. Maybe there's some better ways that I can do it. Somebody else goes, you know what, starting a business is fun. I'm like, fun. I've never thought about that. But what if I could create a program that said, business can be fun and I can play and enjoy and have fun while I'm figuring it out. That changes the whole dynamic.
Yeah.
So our mind, that's all part of our mind. It's part of the being in order to have, in order to do, or do and then
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about, and again, I'm speaking in generalities here, but like, where
Sure.
have you seen NLP be successful or lead to good outcomes? Like, how are people using it to get, results or outcomes?
Yep. Well, I work mainly with, I would say, three sets of people from a training perspective. Let's go there from training NLP. I work with folks who desire to be coaches and therapists, like life coaches, business coaches, and psychotherapists. And I have an ICF accredited coach training program that helps people help people. And I love that aspect because it just makes the world a better place. So it works very well in that realm of helping people help people to unpack their unconscious and their psychological stuff, emotions, beliefs, behaviors, where they run into that roadblock. There's going to be a reason for it. So let's use the mind to figure out a new pattern, but we need to know where you want to go first. The other side is a personal development, personal growth side, that the more you know, the better you can do. Doesn't mean you always do better, but I have seen these skills of NLP transform people's lives from just being stuck in their own thinking and thinking, well, that's how I was brought up, so that's must be who I am and how I am. And then there's a whole leadership and business side of things where people are utilizing the NLP skills to communicate more effectively, to negotiate a little bit better, to get the best out of their team, to manage, lead, recruit more effectively because they're looking at a person's unconscious and their psyche versus just they're looking at the potential of who you're going to be in this company, not who did you come from. And I love that aspect. So from the helping people, the personal growth and business, I think that there's something in NLP for just about everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I think, my journey into NLP kind of started probably about 2 years or so ago, where I was more interested in the communication and the linguistics, the language,
Hmm.
because again, being an English major, that made total
Yeah,
sense. And it was like, oh, I can use, this language to kind of do things better, right? Or approach
you bet.
things that better, right? Then the second part started to become the subconscious part of it, and realizing that the brain is taking in millions of data points per second, right? And we can only accept a handful of those data points.
Yeah.
And so how do we, start to affect the filter or the subconscious
Yep.
mind that is accepting those data points, and which ones are important and which ones aren't? How can we, kind of make, I don't want to say make better decisions, but inevitably it comes to that
Make
eventually.
better
But
decisions.
right,
Absolutely.
if you have a better filter, if you're feeding your mind better stuff, more positive stuff, more, focused stuff, then eventually you start to see more of that. Gratitude, I think, is a great example. I hate journaling. I'm not a journaling fan, which is weird. Being an English major, you would think I would write, but I do every morning. I write three things I'm grateful for every
Yeah.
morning in my daily planner, and then three things like checklist I have to get done for that day, right? My three big needle movers. And once I started writing those three things I was grateful for, I could start seeing more things in the world that I was grateful for, right? It made me more aware of things to be grateful for, not just those three things I wrote for the day. So again, I think if you practice some of this stuff and really work on, being more intentional, that's
Yes.
what the brain or the subconscious mind starts to filter and show you more of, right? It's like you want to buy a blue truck, and all of a sudden you start seeing blue trucks everywhere. It's not
Yeah.
like they instantly made a bunch of more blue trucks, right? It's just that your subconscious mind is showing you what it thinks to be important
Hmm.
more.
Exactly.
And so I think that's kind of, something of interest to me, because it's like, well, if I feed myself and my mind more positivity and more, affirmation type stuff that is going to lead me toward my goal, I'll start seeing more things that'll help lead me toward my North Star, right? So
Right.
that's been the
And I think
second phase.
the same is true on the negative side of it. That
Yeah.
if our focus is on, you know, the hell and damnation of what's going wrong in my world, that's what we're going to see as well. And so being aware, I think that I love the quote by Carl Jung, the one that says, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will control us and and we will call it fate. I love that quote. Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will control us and we will call it fate. Because so many people get into those loops and cycles and they don't recognize them as those patterns. They don't recognize the internal dialogue going, my life is crap. It's never going to get better. See, there's an evidence. See, there's more evidence. See, there's more evidence. Because to your point, we will attract what we're putting out there. So once we become aware of what is working, do more of it. And if we become aware of what isn't working, do something about it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because yes, it's mindset, right? But to some extent, again, there is an underlying aspect of, we don't even know it's there, right? Or there's a
We
block
don't know
or
what we don't
something there.
know. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I think,
But our world gives us glimpses. It gives us glimpses and we think those thoughts, this isn't good. I don't like this. I'm not good at this. This is bad. What is that? How do I know? What causes that? And let's come back and figure out, is that just a throwaway comment or is there something to it?
yeah,
Generally, there's something to it.
yeah, I love that. I think it was Henry Ford quote, right? Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Yep,
And I think the key word there is think, right? Whether you think you
correct.
can or can't, you're right.
Correct.
The mind is a very powerful thing I'm finding over the
Ah,
years. So it's fun to
amazing, isn't it?
peel back on a little bit of this stuff.
Yeah. And
Um,
again, we don't know what we don't know.
yeah, yeah. So go be curious, right? Just
Yeah.
be curious. Go learn. Go, find some stuff that piques your interest and dive deeper into it. Do your own due diligence, become more educated on things that interest you and you're passionate about and light you up, and you'll probably get pretty good results.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what's like a last minute takeaway or a big point you'd like the audience to know about NLP?
I would like people to know that, speaking from that unconscious pattern space, that nothing is set in stone, that everything, that brain plasticity is, as we all know, so very real, and that there are NLP techniques and tools that can help us to improve. That if we do have a belief, there's tools, sometimes just conversational, sometimes close-eyed visualization type of tools that can help us to change some of that internal structure of our thinking, our thoughts, our beliefs, and our behaviors so that we can be more aligned and in tune with what we want. So the strategies and structures are there. There's tools for it.
Yeah, I mean, I I've shared my story a ton, but I failed my board exam a handful of times, and the time that I finally passed it, there were a couple of changes that I made to my lifestyle that I think were part of it. And again, I'm an N of one. And I'm not saying this was the reason that I passed, but I was studying from a book and taking tests on a CD-ROM back in the day. You put it in the computer and take
Yep.
practice tests and stuff. And I did that a bunch of times and I didn't pass. Well, the time where I finally passed, I started studying less. I slept more, 7 to 8 hours. I was drinking more water and exercising. I was using visualization of me kind of seeing myself go into the exam, take the exam, pass the exam, right? I was using positive affirmations and it changed my approach to things. And like I said,
Yeah.
is that the reason I passed? Maybe, maybe not. But it was something different that I did. I felt just, more empowered. I felt better about myself. And the big one for me was also not second guessing myself and trusting my gut. Because on
Yeah.
on on the board exam, a lot of times there's two right answers and you've got to pick the better one. And I think I was getting it down to the last two, the good ones, and then maybe, second
Second guessing.
guessing myself and going with the wrong one. So I just said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pick the answer. I'm going to stick with my gut intuition and just it is what it is. Let's see
Yeah.
what happens. And that's when I finally passed. So,
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I
They say if
that,
you want something different, you got to do something different.
exactly, exactly.
And
So
it's
it
it's
was,
it's not always the outside doing. Most of the time it's the inside
yeah.
doing.
Yeah, I think that was the big one for me. It's just,
Yeah.
the content, you've been
Great
over this
example.
hundreds of times. Just trust in yourself and,
Yeah.
go in with a healthier, clearer mind and a game plan and, attack it. And
Mm-hmm.
that ended up working for me. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a
you know,
similar story from a gentleman that was doing his I'm based in Australia. He was doing his emergency medicine something exams. And he had one more shot at it because he'd failed the first two times. One more shot at it. And if he didn't pass this, then he just couldn't. It was the end. And he was so stressed and so worried. I'm like, okay, tell me what you've done before. And he told me very much what did the first few times you did your exams. And I said, let's do something different. Do you know the information? Yes. Okay. When's the exam? It's like in 2 weeks. All right. Don't do anything. Just relax, have fun, enjoy your life. Maybe look over your notes once or twice, but for 10 or 15 minutes at a time, because you know this. Now it's time to trust it. Because he got himself into this panic and this fear of failure and froze. And when we freeze, like there's an NLP presupposition that says we have all the resources that we need to achieve our desired results. Now, we have all of these resources, attitudes, attributes, skills, beliefs, behaviors, but when we put barriers in front of accessing them, stress, anxiety, fear, trauma, life, overthinking, then we move from an entire, like, pie chart of 100% access to my resources. We narrow that sucker down to 10%.
yep.
And we're trying to do our best work under pressure. And our body doesn't work that way. Our mind doesn't work that way. So sometimes we just need to let go and trust. So I'm so glad that you learned that.
Yeah, I mean, I've had pretty bad test anxiety most of my life, but I
Yeah.
was able to just do it and overcome because I could figure things out. I was smart enough to
Yeah.
do fairly well and get by until
Yeah.
it got to the higher levels and graduate school and, board
Yeah.
exam. And then things ramped up and I was like, whoa, this is too much. So, uh, you know, but again, it was a learning experience, a life experience. It wasn't a failure. It wasn't the end of the world. It was speed bumps that I had to overcome and eventually, change things up and found a way over it. So,
You bet. But we
yeah,
have that's where resilience comes in. My
yeah,
doctoral thesis is on resilience as a preventative and curative tool for trauma. And so many people don't have resilience as a natural way of being, but we can create it, we can build it.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I have two doctoral degrees and I'm easily, one of those guys that's not the smartest in the room most of the time, and I'm okay with that, but I know I've got a high grit score. And so
Right.
I'll just figure a way out. I'll find a way to
Look,
to
I
get it
think
done.
grit over anything else will keep winning.
Yeah, 1,000%. Well,
Yeah.
Dr. Heron, thank you so much for taking the time and for coming on to educate our audience a little bit about NLP, and hope this piques the interest of some of our listeners. We ask all of our guests this one final question. If you could change one aspect of higher education, what would you change and how would you change it?
I think since we've been talking about from an NLP perspective, what I would change is teaching professors how to teach to that why and teaching students how to learn in the way that fits for them and to find their why.
Yeah,
Because we go into education in a way that just says, this is the next thing that I'm doing without maybe a lot of thought. I think some people have thought behind it, but there's so much more. And when we can embrace a sense of building rapport with ourselves and the content that we're teaching and learning, I think it changes the whole entire dynamic. And how I would do that, I would probably introduce some elements of NLP, even from, Bernice McCarthy's format method of teaching and bringing in, starting with the why, and then the what, and then the how, and then what else do we need to know?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's a lot of research out there that kind of shows that like teaching to a learning style may not be beneficial but at the end of the day, as a student, you've got to pick one of them.
Yep.
Which way do you learn best, right? Pick one, focus on that. And if you want to try
Yep.
some of the others a little and see if that,
Go for it.
makes you exactly. But at the end
Go
of the
for it. And
day,
from a teaching perspective, I need to teach in all of them.
exactly. And that
I
goes
need to
back
teach in
to
all of them.
universal design, right? Like
You bet.
I've got to make sure I'm reaching as many as I can for the greater good of the whole class that I have to get from point A to point Z. And we all got to get there at the end and get there together. So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love
We've
that.
all sat in those lectures where they just lecture and there's no pizzazz, there's no anything. And we're supposed to just sit there for an hour and pick up what they're, and I'm highly auditory, but that is not how I learn. I learn by engaging in an auditory, telling, sharing, hearing, listening, conversation. And as
Yeah.
long as I know that, regardless of how somebody now teaches me, I can use my style, regardless of how somebody teaches me.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, again, being an English major has helped with storytelling for me, which makes
Oh,
good
yeah.
connections, in the brain. I think that's how we learn pretty
Yep.
well. And I think that's one of the superlatives I've won over the last several years is the storyteller, and I'm good with that. I'm okay with that because I think that's, we really make connections and can kind of remember things better when you close your eyes and imagine a
Hmm.
situation and hear the story out and you're like, oh, I can
You
see
bet.
that.
I can
So,
see it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Beautiful.
you again so much for being
Pleasure.
here. Yeah. And where can people reach out to you or find you if they have more questions or follow up or just want to see what you're up to these days?
Absolutely. Just my website, Dr. Heidi Heron. It's not even doctor, just HeidiHeron.com. And they
Awesome.
can see where I'm at, what I'm doing, check out some of my books, that kind of stuff.
Great. We'll put that in the show notes so you're easy for
Wonderful.
everybody to find. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Been my pleasure as well. Thank you very much.